the thing I wanted to get into next is something that is hotly debated in the chat section, and I think we didn't discuss enough, and that is, sticking with Greece.
Let's you ready to lose some fans? Let's lose some fans.
No, I'm actually going to agree with them, Icona Boy. So I'll let you take the hit then. No, but I think we should acknowledge that the Greek government had borrowed too much. I think most people agree about that. But the problem with then the IMF, ECB, and European Commission approach was, and this is the approach that the IMF had for the longest time, is, okay, you have to do austerity. But what they didn't say, or what they often don't say, is, okay, what type of austerity do you have to do? And this is something that actually, in their credit, the IMF is pushing now, the research department is pushing now. And this is also a distinction I want to make, which is something that comes obviously to me as a researcher. The research department of the IMF, if we're going to do like a little bit of a scale of, ethical supremacy, the research, being good here, research department is here these days. They are really pushing sort of very new ideas, but sort of the debt enforcement department is just very conservative still of the IMF, because I looked into some of the recent cases and they just do the same stuff all over again, which they did in Greece, which is, cut government spending. But okay, what government spending should you cut? Because this is also something you read in Varoufakis' book. There were problems with massive tax evasion from very wealthy people in Greece. That was common knowledge. And the IMF talked about that. But then they ended up cutting pensions for the elderly, in general. They ended up cutting a lot of the sort of state salaries. And that is something where I think, they make the classic mistake of treating the government like a household. Because, if you're in trouble, Econoboy, sure, you have to cut spending, but your income remains the same. But if a government cuts spending, or at least if it cuts spending to people who actually spend that money back into the economy, then the economy just crashes. And at the same time as sort of tuning down that government spending, you're losing the tax base, if that makes sense. Because the economy is a circular system, right?
No, for sure. I mean, that's just the classic explanation of why austerity is bad, right? That in time of fiscal difficulty for the people of a nation, that's probably not the time to cut the support that you're giving those people, because you can compound the problems that you're currently having.
Yeah, exactly. And this is something I think the economics profession as a whole is moving more towards, and also the research department of the IMF. So I hope that they will change their ways. But I think this is like, anybody can look at a chart of the Greek economy and compare it to countries where the IMF didn't swoop in with its great common sense advice. And you can see that the path is just so much lower, and that economy has just, it's a real tragedy, to be honest. And also, as a European myself, you can just see it, because there are so many Greek people now everywhere, but in Greece, just hypothetically speaking, of course. But I've really seen it. Like, so many smart Greek people are all over Germany, the Netherlands, UK, because they just can't find work in Greece anymore. So it's very likely that economy has really been destroyed for a bit by the IMF. And I think that is really something that, we are talking a bit clinically right now, right? Yeah, the two of us economists, as we often do. But that's definitely a real tragedy. And I think that a lot of people in many countries where the IMF did the same thing will feel much more passionate about this issue. And I think we should recognize that. What do you think?
Yeah, for sure. Obviously. No, I mean, of course. I mean, I say as much in my video about the IMF, which is that it's obviously understandable, especially from the perspective of the countries affected by the IMF, that you would have a more sort of vitriolic view of the dynamics of the IMF, right? That's totally understandable, because whilst the framing of the IMF is just a lending institution, they're just a bank, they're just trying to sustainably finance countries, is quite technocratic, right? That doesn't make the people in those countries who had their pensions cut, their food stamps cut, their social assistance cut, feel any better about it, right? And I say as much in my video on the IMF. And again, that's why, certainly even when viewing the IMF as, just a bank trying to get the money back on its loans and sustainably finance these countries, that doesn't make it right? It just perhaps makes it easier in terms of how you could go about solving those problems in the first place.
Yeah, but also it's very stupid as a bank. Like if you would even just view it as a bank, they also had to do 3 bailouts, right? Because it just didn't get any better. So even if you look at it as only a bank, it's a very stupid idea.
Oh yeah, like at the same time, you're right. That doesn't exactly mean that the IMF is a good bank, right? I guess I should have made that clear in my video. It's not as if countries have only ever had, it's not as if all the countries who have had a run-in with the IMF have only had one run-in, right? That it certainly is you could say quite short-term minded, which might inform some of these policies as well. So yeah, you're totally right as well that there's perhaps a caveat to that framing in that perhaps they might just be a lending institution or a bank, but that certainly doesn't mean that they're good at doing the thing that a bank would do, which is get the money back on their loans and hopefully avoid any sort of emergency credit agreements in the future.
Yeah, because money lending to a government is just different than money lending to an individual, right?